So, um, what if the traffic camera at the end of your street isn't just, looking for speeding cars? What if it's actually part of this, well, a network of 110,000 cameras that are tracking your every move?
Right.
And what if it's all governed by this underlying ideology that basically wants to replace our democracy with, like, a CEO dictator?
It sounds like sci-fi, but yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
But today we are taking a deep dive into exactly that. We're calling it Diagnosing the Architecture of Tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we have a massive stack of sources on the table today.
Oh, yeah, we do.
I mean, we've got reports on artificial intelligence in modern warfare, the quiet explosion of mass surveillance in our local neighborhoods, this severe environmental toll of tech infrastructure, and the underlying political ideologies of these Silicon Valley billionaires. So it looks like this tangled web of totally unrelated crises. But it isn't.
No, it really isn't. I mean, it looks chaotic until you find the right lens to view it through. Because when you're hit with this much disparate information, from military drones all the way to data centers in Tennessee, it's incredibly easy to suffer from just pure information overload.
Oh, absolutely.
You end up just reacting to the headlines instead of understanding the machinery underneath all of it.
Right, and which is exactly why, for this deep dive, we are bringing in a very specific analytical tool to sort of cut through that noise. We're borrowing a framework from one of our sources. It's a textbook chapter, actually, titled Math-Free Dynamical Systems, Chapter 1.
It's a great approach.
Yeah, the premise here is brilliant. We can analyze all of these seemingly chaotic real-world issues by treating them as dynamical systems. And to do that, we just break them down into 4 really simple ingredients. So first, there's the system, which is just where we draw the boundary around whatever we're looking at. Second is the state, which is the current snapshot of all the parts inside that boundary. Third is the rule. That's the invisible engine or mechanism that drives change from one moment to the next.
Right. The rule is key.
Yeah. And finally, time. So whether things move in discrete, choppy steps or a smooth, continuous flow.
Because by treating society and technology as a dynamical system, we can completely strip away the PR spin and the panic. We stop looking at the surface symptoms, like a weird AI hallucination or some new political action committee, and we start seeing the actual physics of how our world is being altered.
Right. And actually, real quick, just a note before we dive into the deep end here. The sources we're unpacking today touch on some highly charged political ideas. They name specific politicians, campaigns, activist groups across the entire political spectrum.
Yeah, they do.
So our job today is not to take sides. We're not here to endorse any of these viewpoints or political figures. We're just here to impartially hold a magnifying glass to the source material. We want to figure out how these systems actually work. So we're just analyzing the architecture of the arguments, nothing more.
Exactly. And so if we apply this dynamical systems framework to the real world, the most urgent place to start is definitely the battlefield.
Yes. Let's look at the militarization of AI, because we are specifically referencing Heidi Klof's comprehensive report. It's called Anatomy of an AI Kill Chain, along with the ongoing warnings from AI ethicist Timnit Gebru.
Right.
And when we try to define the system in a military context, I think most of us naturally picture a single self-contained unit, like a Terminator, a killer robot that just thinks for itself. But Kloff is arguing that drawing the system boundary around one machine is a fundamental misunderstanding of modern warfare, isn't it?
It is. Drawing the boundary around a single algorithm completely misses the forest for the trees here. Kloff explains that the actual system boundary is much wider and honestly a lot more fragile.
Okay.
It includes a vast series of chained algorithms. So, for example, you have older traditional computer vision systems that identify ships on the ground.
Right, like a drone camera.
Exactly. And those systems feed their data into modern large language models, which then summarize and translate the data. That output is then fed into decision support software. And crucially, the system boundary has to include the human operators sitting in a command center. They are not outside the machine. They are a component within the loop.
Wow. Okay. So if that entire chain is our system, what is the state? Because according to the textbook, the state is the exact snapshot of everything within that boundary at any given moment.
Right. Well, in this military context, the state is the massive, overwhelming influx of intercepted data at a specific second in time. The sources detail how militaries are currently using these AI chains to sift through literally millions of intercepted Arabic communications in Gaza to generate target lists. So that raw audio and text data, combined with the AI's initial sorting and flagging, that constitutes the physical state of the system.
Okay, so once you have a state, you need a rule. The mechanism that acts on that data to produce an outcome. And And this is where the sources paint a very disturbing picture. Because the rule driving this military AI system is fundamentally broken at the mathematical level, right?
It is.
Clough points out that the large language models being used for translation and targeting, they have a baseline accuracy of only 30 to 60%.
Yeah, you have to think about the mechanics of how a large language model actually works. It doesn't understand Arabic or English the way a human translator does.
Right.
It's essentially autocomplete on steroids. It is probabilistically predicting the next most likely word based on its training data. So when you apply that to highly nuanced, dialect-heavy intercepted radio communications in a literal war zone, the model is going to guess wrong. A lot.
And the sources highlight a chilling example of this. An AI mistranslated a specific Arabic word for payment as the word payload.
Yes.
And because of that probabilistic error, that bad guess innocent people were added to a targeting list.
Yes.
But here's where I imagine, military officials would push back.
Right.
Because they constantly insist, oh, there's a human in the loop.
Right. Of course.
The AI just makes a suggestion, a human makes the final call. So doesn't that make human judgment the ultimate rule of the system?
Well, that is the stated rule for public relations, but the psychological reality is very different. Timnit Gebru and Heidi Clough bring in a vital concept here called automation bias.
Automation bias.
Yeah, we have to look at why human operators act the way they do under pressure. When a human is sitting in a bunker, exhausted, overwhelmed by a flood of data, and a highly sophisticated multi-million-dollar computer system flashes a red box on a screen and says, target the human brain, takes a cognitive shortcut.
Wow.
The mental load is just too high to independently verify the translation of payload versus payment. So the human defaults to trusting the machine. It's laundering accountability.
That is the perfect way to phrase it, yes.
Yeah.
The human operator is basically kept in the system boundary to take the blame if something goes wrong or to satisfy international law, but they aren't actually exercising independent judgment.
Right.
So the true hidden rule governing this dynamical system is a flawed, hallucinated machine output that is merely rubber-stamped by a human.
Oh, man. And this brings us to the fourth ingredient, which is time. The dynamic of time radically alters how this rule operates, doesn't it? Because the military leaders quoted in these sources, they openly boast about taking intelligence processes that used to take hours or days, processes that involved human debate, gathering context, verifying sources, and shrinking them down to seconds.
Yeah, they're taking the continuous nuanced flow of traditional military intelligence and compressing it into rapid, discrete ticks of a clock. Tick audio intercepted, tick AI translates payment to payload, tick target generated, tick human approves, tick strike. Jeez. So when we put those four ingredients together, the chain system, the messy data state, the automation bias rule, and the hyper-compressed discrete time, what kind of system do we actually have?
We have a catastrophic mismatch. So let's use a quick analogy to explain two terms from the Dynamical Systems textbook: stochastic and deterministic.
Okay.
A deterministic system is perfectly predictable. If you flip a light switch up, the light turns on. Cause and effect are locked together.
Right.
A stochastic system is more like predicting the weather. It has elements of randomness and probability. And because of the 30 to 60% accuracy rates and AI hallucinations, this military kill chain is effectively stochastic. It's rolling loaded dice.
Wow.
But because of the immense time pressure and automation bias, militaries are treating the system as if you're deterministic. They're treating a coin flip like a light switch.
Treating a completely random system as infallible when human lives are on the line. And this illusion of perfect automated control, it isn't just happening in distant war zones, though. Because if we shift our framework from the global battlefield to the domestic front, we see the exact same dynamical rules creeping into our own neighborhoods.
Oh, yeah, we do.
So let's apply our four ingredients to the mass surveillance mosaic.
This is perhaps the most visceral example in our sources of a system boundary expanding without anyone realizing it.
Yeah, we're looking at companies like Flock Safety and Axon, who provide automated license plate readers, or ALPRs, to police departments and even homeowners associations. And initially, the system boundary was presented as extremely narrow and harmless. It's just a single solar-powered camera mounted on a telephone pole in your subdivision, and its only job is to look for the license plates of stolen cars.
Right, that's the pitch. But investigations by journalists like James Lee revealed that the true system boundary is staggering in its scope. It doesn't just include one camera. It includes over 110,000 cameras nationwide.
110,000.
Yeah, it includes audio sensors designed to triangulate gunshots. It integrates with third-party facial recognition databases. And all of this hardware feeds into a single centralized cloud platform called Flock OS.
Okay, so this massive expansion of the boundary fundamentally changes the state of the system.
Yeah.
We aren't just looking at isolated snapshots of cars anymore.
Not at all. In legal and privacy circles, this touches on something called the Mosaic problem. So let's break down what that means.
Yeah, please.
If a police officer sits at an intersection and writes down your license plate as you drive by, that is a discrete data point. It's harmless. You are in public view. But imagine taking a single pixel from a high-definition photograph. One pixel tells you nothing.
Right.
But when you aggregate billions of these discrete data points, when you put all the pixels together, the state transforms entirely. It is no longer a list of license plates. The system can now map exactly where you sleep, what political rallies you attend, which doctors you visit, and who you're dating.
It creates a comprehensive, intimate chronicle of a person's entire life.
Yes, because think about it. No human observer, no police department could realistically assign a detective to follow you 24/7 to gather that mosaic of information. It would be prohibitively expensive and legally dubious.
Right.
But the technology creates a state of total visibility that effectively bypasses traditional Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable search simply by scaling up the collection of quote-unquote harmless data.
Okay, so we have this massive system and an incredibly sensitive state of data. What is the rule governing who gets to look at it? Because the stated rule from these companies, which is heavily marketed to city councils,
Right.
is always public safety.
Right, public safety.
It's pitched as a tool to catch kidnappers or find stolen vehicles.
Yeah.
But I imagine there are safeguards against police officers just using this massive database to spy on whoever they want.
You would hope so, but the sources show the hidden rule is unchecked, warrantless access that is completely ripe for abuse. I mean, the scale of the misuse is alarming. Authorities have uncovered at least 50 law enforcement officers using the system for entirely unauthorized personal purposes.
Wait, like what kind of purposes?
Well, the sources detail a specific case of a police chief who used the ALPR system over 600 times to stalk his ex-mistress and track the movements of her teenage daughter.
Over 600 times. That is a total failure of the stated rule.
Oh, absolutely. And it goes beyond intentional stalking into catastrophic errors, too. There are multiple stories in the sources of innocent people having guns drawn on them on the interstate, terrified because the AI confused an 8 for a 9 on their license plate and flagged them as driving a stolen vehicle.
You're kidding.
No, the Los Angeles Police Department actually found a 32% false positive rate for stolen vehicle alerts generated by these systems.
A 32% error rate resulting in drawn weapons. So the rule isn't precision public safety. The rule is a dragnet.
Exactly.
And let's look at how time functions in this dragnet. Because when privacy advocates push back, Flock argues that their cameras don't track you continuously. They argue that they only capture discrete moments in time. A snapshot as you pass the camera. Tick, you cross town. Tick, another snapshot.
Yeah, they rely heavily on the defense that discrete time isn't tracking. But mathematically, according to our Dynamical Systems textbook, if you sample discrete time finely enough, it becomes indistinguishable from a continuous flow.
How so?
Think of a flipbook animation. A flipbook is just a stack of discrete, disconnected pictures. But if you flip them fast enough, your eye perceives fluid, continuous motion.
Oh, wow.
By placing 110,000 cameras across the country, they're capturing so many discrete snapshots that they have effectively built a continuous tracking system.
And people are starting to see the flipbook for what it is.
Yeah.
The sources show a massive grassroots backlash forming. Citizens from across the political spectrum, from progressive blue cities to libertarian red rural counties, they're showing up to their local council meetings. They're demanding their towns cancel these contracts.
Yes, they are.
But here is the frustrating part highlighted in the texts. Even when a town successfully campaigns to cancel their Flock contract, the city sometimes turns around and signs a new contract with Axon for the exact same technology.
Yeah.
The system just changes its brand name. But the underlying rule remains exactly the same.
Which tells us that the drive for this surveillance state is deeply embedded in the structure of modern governance. To actually change the system, you have to do more than swap vendors. You have to fundamentally change the rule of how data can be collected and used without a warrant.
Right, and this raises a really practical question. Because we have this massive web of data capture from military satellites to neighborhood cameras, and we call it the cloud, but where does all that data physically go? It can't just live in the ether.
Right. The term "the cloud" is one of the most successful intentional misdirections in modern marketing.
Yeah.
It is designed to make the system boundary seem abstract and weightless, as if our data is just floating harmlessly in the sky. But Timnit Gebru and environmental justice advocate Justin Pearson fiercely point out that the boundary of this tech system must include the physical earth and human labor.
So the system physically resides in massive computing facilities, gigantic, sprawling data centers. So our state in this aspect of the analysis isn't digital information. It is the physical, ecological reality of local communities.
Yes.
The sources focus heavily on Memphis, Tennessee, where Elon Musk is operating the Colossus 1 and Colossus 2 supercomputer data centers for his AI company, XAI.
Let's look at the physical state of that facility, because to power the immense computational demands of training AI, you need incredible amounts of electricity and water for cooling. And what is the rule acting upon this physical state?
Right.
According to Justin Pearson, the rule is unchecked resource extraction. Pearson notes that these Memphis data centers are running on 59 gas turbines.
59 gas turbines running constantly.
Yes. And Pearson's advocacy highlights that these turbines have been illegally polluting the air, operating in direct violation of the Clean Air Act. They were reportedly allowed to operate for nearly a year without the proper permits from the Health Department or the Environmental Protection Agency.
It's the classic historical rule of privatizing the profits and socializing the costs. The local, often working-class community in Memphis has to breathe the smog and listen to the industrial roar of 59 gas turbines, while the company promises investors that their new AI will be super intelligent.
Yeah, exactly.
And the classic defense for this kind of industrial footprint is always, well, it brings jobs to the community.
But Pearson argues that is a false promise in the context of AI. These centers are not like traditional manufacturing plants that employ thousands of locals. They are highly automated. The ultimate intended output of these data centers is to produce AI models that will eventually replace local jobs, not create them.
And this rule of extraction and exploitation isn't just local. It is a global phenomenon. Timnit Gebru's research at her institute, DR, highlights the human labor rule that underpins this entire industry. We think of AI as this brilliant, autonomous intelligence. But how does it learn what a stop sign is? How does it learn what hate speech is?
It learns because human beings manually teach it line by line. Gebru points to the invisible workforce in the Global South, specifically data workers in Kenya. These workers are paid roughly $1 an hour, working in grueling sweatshop-like conditions with heavily monitored breaks.
$1 an hour.
Yeah, and their job is to look at images and text all day, often deeply traumatic, violent, or explicit content, and manually label it so the AI knows what to filter out.
So the autonomous machine is actually powered by a hidden underclass of human labor.
Exactly. The rule governing the physical foundation of AI is deeply exploitative. It relies on extracting cheap, unprotected human labor in places like Kenya and extracting unregulated natural resources polluting the air and water in vulnerable communities in places like Memphis.
And this isn't theoretical history. This is happening in continuous time right now.
Yeah.
It is the air being breathed today. But in dynamical systems, when a rule pushes a state too far, you often get emergent behavior right. The system pushes back. And we are seeing that. Communities from Memphis, Tennessee to Mount Pleasant, Wisconsin are waking up to the physical reality of the cloud. They are organizing through democratic action, protesting zoning laws, and forcing politicians to pay attention to these toxic data centers. They are trying to rewrite the rules of the system from the ground up to protect their physical state.
Which brings us to the most crucial question of this entire analysis. If grassroots communities are fighting to rewrite the rules from the bottom up, who is writing the rules from the top down?
Now, who is actually building this architecture?
Yeah.
Because when you look at the military AI making probabilistic kills, the domestic surveillance mapping our lives, and the resource extraction choking our communities, you have to ask, what is the philosophical root driving all of this?
For that, we turn to the deep investigative reporting of Gil Duran, author of The Nerd Reich.
Duran argues that the architects of this technology, figures like Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, and political philosophers like Curtis Yarvin, they have a very specific shared view of the ultimate system. And the boundary they draw for that system is nothing less than the entire globe.
To understand the rule they want to impose on the globe, you have to trace their ideology back to its source code. Duran points to a pivotal 1997 book called The Sovereign Individual.
1997, wow.
Yeah, it is a text that figures like Peter Thiel consider almost prophetic. It's a blueprint for the future. The core thesis of the book is that the current operating system of humanity, nation states, democratic elections, the civil service, is essentially obsolete software.
Okay, so let's define their view of the state. When they look at the current state of society, they don't see a thriving democracy. They see stagnation. They see a world where the brilliant cognitive elite, meaning themselves, are unfairly constrained.
Right.
They feel weighed down by democratic laws, by taxation, by regulations, and frankly, by the votes of everyday average people.
So if they perceive democracy as a flawed, inefficient state, what is the rule they want to implement to fix it?
Their rule is fundamentally tech over politics. They want to apply a radical new rule where technology doesn't just assist society but ultimately overthrows the democratic process. And the sources outline a playbook that is deeply unsettling when you lay it out piece by piece.
It really is.
For example, Curtis Yarvin, who's been highly influential in these circles, openly advocates for replacing the democratic presidency with a CEO dictator.
Yeah.
A monarch who runs the country like a startup with no Congress to slow them down.
And part of running a country like a startup involves liquidating the old employees.
Right.
We see this in their push to purge the federal civil service. The people who test our water, manage our national parks, and ensure food safety are viewed as bureaucratic waste. This ideological push is the exact framework behind initiatives like the proposed Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE.
But it extends even beyond taking over existing governments. If they can't take over a nation state, they are actively funding the creation of their own. They want to build private corporate city-states.
Yeah, the sources mention the Prospero project in Honduras, where private investors attempted to build a charter city with its own corporate laws and courts, completely separate from the host nation's constitution.
Unbelievable.
And there is also the seasteading movement, which aims to build autonomous floating cities in international waters.
Places where corporations make the laws entirely unburdened by democratic oversight or labor unions. And to make sure the obsolete nation-states can't track them or tax them, they need a new financial rule.
Right.
This is where their fervent push for cryptocurrencies comes in. The goal isn't just to make money. The goal is to replace fiat currency, entirely moving all wealth outside the reach of traditional government authority and taxation.
Duran refers to this overarching ideology as totalitarian capitalism, or quoting the philosopher Nick Land, who heavily influences this movement, they view capitalism and artificial intelligence as literal gods.
Literal gods.
Yeah. The hidden rule of this ideological engine is to consolidate ultimate wealth and power among a very small group of tech oligarchs. Simultaneously, they plan to use advanced AI and robotics to render the human working class completely obsolete. In their view, if a human isn't part of the cognitive elite, they are just a liability to the system.
Let's look at how this relates to time in our dynamical systems framework.
Yeah.
Because they aren't advocating for gradual, continuous change. They don't want to slowly win over voters over the next 50 years. They are trying to force a permanent phase shift.
Yes, a total shift.
They want to move society out of the continuous, messy, unpredictable flow of democratic debate and snap it into a rigid, discrete, deterministic hierarchy ruled by private tech monopolies. They want to be the sole authors of the code for the future of humanity.
It is a breathtaking level of hubris. But the danger is that this isn't just a dorm room philosophy debate anymore. When you look at the billions of dollars they are pouring into political campaigns, the massive data centers they are physically building in our towns, the surveillance networks they are laying down on our streets, they are executing the code.
Right.
They are building the infrastructure for this new rule.
So if we pull all the way back and synthesize everything we've covered today, the picture becomes incredibly clear. Whether we are analyzing an AI kill chain, misidentifying targets in Gaza, a license plate reader tracking a citizen in a suburb, a gas turbine choking the air in Memphis, or a billionaire's secret society trying to build a private floating country, they're all governed by the exact same dynamical rules.
They are.
A very small, highly capitalized group of people are aggressively redefining the boundaries of our society. They are capturing our personal data, our physical movements, and our natural resources to feed their state. And they are writing new, largely hidden rules to consolidate their power.
By using the dynamical systems framework, we can see that none of these events are isolated incidents. They are interconnected parts of a massive shift in how human civilization is organized.
Which brings us back to our goal of diagnosing the architecture of tomorrow. I'm going to leave everyone with a final lingering idea drawn directly from that Dynamical Systems textbook. The author talks about something called the hidden variable challenge.
Oh, yeah. It is one of the most profound concepts in the book.
In dynamical systems, if you are observing a system
Hmm.
and you cannot predict its behavior if it seems crazy or erratic or fundamentally broken, it almost always means there is a hidden variable that you aren't seeing.
Right.
For years, the general public has watched the tech industry, and we couldn't understand why these brilliant billionaires were acting so strangely. We couldn't understand why they would rush to release deeply flawed, hallucinating AI to the public. We wondered why surveillance cameras were appearing overnight in our towns without a public vote. We were baffled as to why tech leaders were suddenly aligning with extreme anti-democratic political factions. We thought the system was broken. We thought they were just moving fast and breaking things by accident.
But the hidden variable challenge forces us to ask, what if it isn't broken? What if it is functioning perfectly?
Exactly. What if the hidden variable isn't a glitch in the technology? What if the hidden variable is the deliberate ideological goal of rendering democracy obsolete? If that is the hidden rule they are playing by, if the goal is to consolidate power and bypass the public, then the system isn't random or broken at all.
No, it's entirely deterministic.
It is doing exactly what it was engineered to do.
And mathematically speaking, if a system is deterministic, it will inevitably keep heading toward its final state unless a new opposing force acts upon it.
The system won't fix itself. The only way to change a deterministic system is for the parts within it, the citizens, the local communities, us to wake up, realize the role we are playing in their system, assert our own boundaries, and rewrite the rule.